Good morning, Asia. Good evening, America. You're watching World DNA with me, Jyotsna.
And I'm Kripa, and on the show today, investigators say that the armed man who breached security at the White House Correspondents' Dinner attended by President Trump wrote that administration figures were his targets prioritized from highest ranking to lowest. The suspect, identified by the officials as Cole Thomas Allen of California, is in custody and expected to be charged with multiple crimes in a court appearance on Monday. We will bring you more on that.
Well, also on the show, Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi headed to Russia as peace efforts between Tehran and Washington hung in balance. And this is following a flurry of regional diplomacy and the collapse of planned talks in Pakistan. However, Iranian media Fars news agency has said that Iran had sent written messages to the Americans via mediator Pakistan outlining red lines, including nuclear issues and the Strait of Hormuz. We'll bring you all the details and developments on that. Let's begin with the headlines.
It does appear that he did, in fact, have set out to target folks that work in the administration, likely including the president.
U.S. investigators say gunman who tried to storm gala dinner attended by Trump planned to assassinate U.S. President and top officials. Acting Attorney General says preliminary probe indicates that he was targeting members of administration.
And the guy is a sick guy. When you read his manifesto, he hates Christians. That's one thing for sure. He hates Christians, a hatred. And I think his sister or his brother actually was complaining about it.
Gunman Cole Thomas Allen reportedly sent a manifesto to his family shortly before opening fire at White House press dinner, expressing intent to target Trump administration officials. U.S. President called him a sick person, saying his family members raised concerns about him.
Russian Foreign Ministry confirms Putin is set to meet Iranian Foreign Minister as he visits Moscow amid stalled peace talks between Iran and US. Araghchi is expected to discuss the status of negotiations, ceasefire, and other developments.
News Supreme report says military spending in Asia's Pacific rose at fastest rate in 2025 amid concerns among U.S. allies over security commitments. The spending reached $2.89 trillion, that is up 2.9%, marking 11 straight years of surge.
Lebanon's health ministry says Israeli strikes on southern Lebanon killed 14 people, including women and children, making it the deadliest day since recent ceasefire. Both Israel and Hezbollah accuse each other of violating the truce.
Former Israeli PM Naftali Bennett and opposition leader Yair Lapid announced joint electoral list aimed at unseating PM Netanyahu. New Together party led by Bennett promises probe into failures surrounding the October 7 Hamas attack.
North Korean leader Kim and Russian speaker Volodin unveil memorial in Pyongyang honoring liberation of Russia's Kursk region, amid reports of North Korean military support for Russia in the Ukraine war.
A magnitude 6.2 earthquake strikes Japan's northern island of Hokkaido at a depth of 83 kilometers. Authorities report no tsunami risk and damage or casualties are expected to be minimal due to the area's low population.
Oil prices rise around 2% on Monday, with Brent crude hitting a 3-week high near $108 per barrel. Stalled Iran-US talks raises concerns about prolonged disruptions to West Asian energy exports and tightening global supply.
Donald J. Trump and First Lady Melania Trump.
See a man charge a security checkpoint armed with multiple weapons.
The sound of the shots fired. The Secret Service is now in charge.
A preliminary investigation into the shooting at the White House press dinner suggests that the gunman planned to assassinate U.S. President Donald Trump and multiple top officials.
In an interview, acting U.S. Attorney General Todd Blanche said that the initial investigation and searches of the shooter's electronic devices suggests the shooter was targeting members of the Trump administration.
We have preliminary work into some of his electronic devices and talking to some of individuals who knew him. And based upon that work, I want to be careful not to say something that ends up not being true, because, like I said, this is 12 hours old. But it does appear that he did, in fact, have set out to target folks that work in the administration, likely including the president.
Now, Blanche added that no further motive was known for the attack. He confirmed the suspect was staying at the Washington Hilton Hotel where the black tie dinner was held, adding that agencies were investigating how he took those firearms inside the hotel. Reports say the shooter's guns were purchased legally.
It appears that he checked in on the 24th to the hotel, and we're still looking at video surveillance and footage of where he walked and how he got in and how those firearms got in. But at the end of the day, I expect we'll have a lot more about that in the coming days.
Now, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has also said that the shooter sought to assassinate Trump and kill as many top administration officials as possible. In a post on X, Leavitt called for an end to political violence and thanked law enforcement officials for their swift response.
Now, reports suggest that minutes before the shooting, the accused sent an anti-Trump manifesto to his family members. According to the New York Post, the accused had written in a note that his targets would be prioritized from highest ranking to lowest.
U.S. President Donald Trump also said that the shooter had written an anti-Christian manifesto. In an interview to Fox News, he called the shooter a sick guy who hates Christians and that his family previously expressed concerns about him to law enforcement officials.
The guy is a sick guy. When you read his manifesto, he hates Christians. That's one thing for sure. He hates Christians, a hatred. And I think his sister or his brother actually was complaining about it. You know, they were even complaining to law enforcement. So he was a very troubled guy.
Meanwhile, the FBI, which is probing the incident, visited residents living near the home of the shooter and were seen questioning the residents in relation to the incident.
Now, federal agents arrested the shooter identified as Cole Thomas Allen after he ran through security checkpoints. Allen was headed toward the hotel's packed ballroom where President Donald Trump, First Lady Melania, Vice President J.D. Vance and several cabinet members were attending the annual event.
Now, despite the security incident, U.S. President Donald Trump has said that a planned visit by King Charles III will proceed as per plans. Now, King Charles and Queen Camilla are slated to begin their 4-day state visit to the U.S. beginning Monday. The trip, which comes as the U.S. approaches the 250th anniversary of its independence from Britain, is meant to celebrate the strong relationship between the two countries.
King Charles is coming, and he's a great guy, and We look forward to it. He's really a fantastic person and a tremendous representative. And he's brave. You know, he's fought something that's very tough to fight.
To discuss more on this, we are now being joined by Stephen Golub, live from California. He's a political analyst and lawyer. Welcome to WION World is One, sir. How does an armed man get that close to the President of the United States?
Boy, that's a question everyone's asking. Those who are defending the Secret Service and the other security arrangements involved say that, look, he didn't even get to the same floor that Trump was on. And that the system worked as it should. On the other hand, he was within inside this hotel. He did get apparently to the top of the stairway leading down to the floor where the ballroom was and where the president and other top officials were. So frankly, I'm reading varying accounts, some saying, well, the system worked, and some saying, no, it didn't work. One of the many variations in describing what went on is this was not given the highest security rating in terms of preparing by the administration itself in terms of preparing for this event. On the other hand, some other folks are saying, well, the White House Correspondents' Dinner never gets the highest security rating for various reasons. Rating by rating, I mean preparation or status in terms of what's done. So we'll see over the course of the coming days whether the security arrangements were adequate. Right now, there are lots of questions to be asked, and hopefully we'll get some answers.
Absolutely. Of course, the investigation is still going on. And one of the investigators, they say that the gunman who tried to storm the dinner had attended by Trump had planned to assassinate President Trump and also top officials. Now, again, this is not the first time. There are 2 times that this has been caught on camera. And when we take a look at political violence as a whole, we kind of remember Nancy Pelosi's house getting raided. We also remember Charlie Kirk being shot last year itself. According to you, how do you assess the state of political violence in the United States at the current moment?
Oh, well, that's another good question, and it's an even sadder one in some ways. There has been escalation in political violence, particularly on the right, over the course of the past decade, with more and more documented cases of people being politically motivated, I should say, from the right wing of the U.S. Populace, attempting or succeeding at committing acts of violence. That's not to say people on the left don't do it, but it has been coming much more from the right. With this fellow, he doesn't seem to have been part of any organized group at all. He does seem clearly to have had political motivations, given the manifesto he issued, given the statements he circulated. I think he sent messages to family members or other folks shortly before launching this attack. So we've got a bad combination of circumstances in the U.S. On the one hand, some rising intensity of political hatred from one side to the other, and as it's manifested, more coming from the right than from the left. We have, unfortunately, I don't want to have to single out President Trump for this, but he's contributed to some of this bitterness and actually pardoned the January 6th insurrectionists who committed a massive act and dangerous act of political violence. So it's a problem in the U.S. And of course, then it's compounded by the fact that we've got more guns per capita than I believe any country on earth, more murders per capita than any due to gun violence, or deaths due to gun violence than any country on earth. When you have so many guns floating around and so easily accessible, it makes it more possible for either an organized group or a single nut to access them and to try to undertake an act of political violence.
Stephen, Trump now says that the incident proves why his new White House ballroom must be built quickly. Is security just being politically repurposed here? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm cynical or skeptical about a lot of things Donald Trump says, because they're often not grounded in reality or facts or a counter to facts. He's planned a lot of events, activities, structures and the like that are kind of a monument to his ego, to be frank. One of them being a structure he's planning for Washington, D.C., that'll be bigger than the Arc de Triomphe in Paris. So a lot of what's going on here may be, in terms of his wanting a ballroom, may be an ego. This ballroom will be bigger than the White House residence and the East and West wings combined. It's going to be a massive structure. There's a need that if he even wanted something for public events, did he really need to go so largely, so greatly into this with a structure that right now is estimated costing $400 million, and by the time they finish it could be much more than that. So, there's one thing I want to add just in response to your earlier question. In an odd way, maybe this gunman, I don't want to put a positive spin on it, but he might have done a bit of a favor to future security arrangements for President Trump or any other public official, in that he pointed out in one of his notes that that Iranian agents could have had easy access with more dangerous weaponry. So maybe this act, fortunately not seriously injuring anyone, could contribute to better security planning in the future.
But then again, it also shows how much of a danger it has to be to show how much of security lapse is there, because this event is not just about Donald Trump. It's all of the top U.S. officials, the Secretary of War. You have the state of course, Marco Rubio. You have the spokesperson, and there are reports of this man being there as a guest at the hotel. Somebody with all these weapons as a guest and gets entry inside. And when we see the CCTV footage, we see this person, going past the security, and it looks almost like, how was it able to do that, considering the fact that he had weapons there? And there are a lot of reporters who were there. Of course, the press and media were present at the event. What they said was that they just needed one piece of paper of the event, and they just got in without even a ID check. There seems to be a very lack of security, considering the fact that there were very top officials at the dinner.
Yeah, you're right about that. There are some forms of security officials who are saying that the system worked, but you're showing that, in a sense, the broader system didn't work, that someone could get this close to the ballroom, and that the system for checking people's IDs and the like to make sure that they were legitimately there seemed kind of lax. So that's one thing that certainly will be examined going down the line. There's one other irony to this, a sad coincidence to this, is in that when President Ronald Reagan, when there was an assassination attempt that almost succeeded on his life, he was badly injured more than 40 years ago. It was outside the Washington Hilton, the same hotel where this event took place.
Absolutely. Of course, we'll have to wait for the investigation to find out whether or not, there was a lapse or what kind of charges we'll have to see. But thank you so much for joining on the Barcast and giving your insights into this. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, U.S. President Donald Trump has reiterated that the United States holds all the cards in the war with Iran.
And this a day after he canceled a trip of his envoys, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, to Islamabad. He dismissed the talks as sitting around talking about nothing. Speaking to Fox News, Trump said that Iranian officials can speak to the negotiators by telephone whenever they want.
It's a 17, 18-hour flight. I said, when is this meeting taking place? And it was going to be on Tuesday, and it was Saturday, and they're leaving, and by the time they get there, it's hours and hours and hours of flying. And I said, we're not doing this anymore. We have all the cards. If they want to talk, they can come to us, or they can call us. There is a telephone.
As peace efforts between Tehran and Washington hang in the balance, Iran's Fars news agency said Iran has sent written messages to the Americans via mediator Pakistan. In the message, they have outlined the red lines, including nuclear issue and the Strait of Hormuz. However, Fars said it was not part of formal negotiations.
Now, this as Iran's foreign minister is headed to Russia. Russia's foreign ministry said that Abbas Araghchi was traveling to Moscow for talks without providing more details.
Earlier, Iran's ISNA news agency quoted Tehran's ambassador to Russia, Qasem Jalali, saying Arakchi is expected to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow on Monday to consult with Russian officials regarding the latest status of the negotiations, ceasefire, and surrounding developments.
On Saturday, Arakchi met Pakistan's military chief Asim Munir, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, and Foreign Minister Uttar before traveling to Oman and returning to Islamabad.
Now, Ibrahim Razai, who is serving as spokesperson for Iran's National Security and Foreign Policy Commission, has claimed that Pakistan lacks the credibility required for mediation. In a statement on X, he described Islamabad as a good friend and neighbor, but argued it is not a suitable intermediary and tends to align with U.S. interests.
U.S. President Donald Trump has said he has good conversations with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
Well, this as he aims to settle the over 4-year-long war. In an interview with Fox News, Trump said his team is working on the situation, adding that peace would be achieved soon. He called the hatred between Putin and Zelensky ridiculous. The U.S. president said, and I'm quoting him here, "It's crazy, and hate is a bad thing when you're trying to settle something, but it will happen." Trump had vowed to end the war that began in February of 2022, but more than a year into his second term, the conflict continues. Russia, Ukraine continue to exchange fire. 5 people were killed across Ukraine after Moscow launched more than 100 drones on the intervening night of Saturday and Sunday.
In its aftermath, Zelensky accused Russia of once again bringing the world to a brink of a man-made disaster, while highlighting how Russian drones regularly pass over Chernobyl and that one had hit its protective shell last year. And this as Ukraine marked the 40th anniversary of the nuclear disaster.
Well, Zelensky also announced that the first tranche of a $106 billion loan package from the European Union will be directed towards domestic weapons productions, including drones to protect Ukraine. He said several $billion will also be allocated to protect energy facilities to prepare for next winter. Well, a forest fire broke out in the Seshachalam Hills near temple town of Tirupati in India's Andhra Pradesh.
Now, the incident has raised concern over recurring summer blazes in the region. Here are some visuals from there. Take a look. Well, with that, we'll be coming back. We're going to a short break. We'll come back with more news and updates on World Day. Stay tuned.
Campaigns, elections, alliances, controversies, and power play. Stories that analyze global and domestic politics. A dedicated show with varied perspectives, expert take, citizens' voices, detailed ground reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to Power, only on WION.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
5 states, one powerful voice. From Tamil Nadu to West Bengal. Kerala to Assam. Every vote shapes the future. Get the election pulse only on WION. In-depth coverage of global issues broken down into facts, figures, and simple words. Backed with analysis from field experts who truly matter, because we believe in decoding the real picture for you. So you get a much wider and deeper understanding of stories from around the world, a 360-degree analysis. An award-winning documentary series, week after week creating the maximum impact. Watch WION Wide Angle at these times on WION. World is One. From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
In this rapidly changing world, is your health keeping pace? Best practices and breakthroughs busting the hype with real insights. The timeless power of yoga and ancient healing. Good food, good mood. Small steps, big impact. Your health matters. Only on WION World is One. Because nothing matters more.
Get the latest update.
Destroy their
Breaking
missiles
news.
and raise their...
Credible, clear, continuous. Experts across aisles. Diverse voices, one platform. WION World is One.
WION, India's global voice. The channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is One.
Campaigns, elections, alliances, controversies, and power play. Stories that analyze global and domestic politics. A dedicated show with varied perspectives, expert take, citizens' voices, detailed ground reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to Power, only on WION.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
In this rapidly changing world, is your health keeping pace? Best practices and breakthroughs busting the hype with real insights. The timeless power of yoga and ancient healing. Good food, good mood. Small steps, big impact. Your health matters. Only on WION World is One. Because nothing matters more.
Vielleicht nur auf dem Vorstand.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. This is World TNU with me, Kripa and Josna. Let's start with the headlines.
Britain's King Charles begins 4-day state visit to the U.S. today, aimed at reinforcing historic ties. Trip comes amid rising transatlantic tensions over Iran war and follows a shooting at a dinner hosted by President Trump.
And the guy is a sick guy. When you read his manifesto, he hates Christians. That's one thing for sure. He hates Christians, a hatred. And I think his sister or his brother actually was complaining about it.
Gunman Cole Allen reportedly sent a manifesto to his family shortly before opening fire at White House press dinner, expressing intent to target Trump administration officials. U.S. President called him a sick person, saying his family members raised concerns about him.
U.S. military strikes a suspected drug trafficking boat in Eastern Pacific, killing 3 people. U.S. Southern Command says the vessel was operated by designated terrorist groups. At least 185 people have now been killed in similar U.S. strikes.
Russian Foreign Ministry confirms Putin is set to meet Iranian Foreign Minister as he visits Moscow amid stalled peace talks between Iran and US. Araghchi is expected to discuss the status of negotiations, ceasefire and other developments.
News Supreme report says military spending in Asia Pacific rose at fastest rate in 2025 amid concerns among U.S. allies over security commitments. The spending reached $2.89 trillion, that is up 2.9%, marking 11 straight years of surge.
North Korean leader Kim and Russian Speaker Volodin unveil memorial in Pyongyang honoring liberation of Russia's Kursk region amid reports of North Korean military support for Russia in the Ukraine war.
Magnitude 6.2 earthquake strikes Japan's northern island of Hokkaido at a depth of 83 kilometers. Authorities report no tsunami risk and damage or casualties are expected to be minimal due to the area's low population.
Gold slips Monday as a stronger dollar and rising oil prices fuel inflation fears and expectations of prolonged high interest rates. Spot gold falls 0.3% while the US gold futures drop 0.9% amid stalled peace talks.
Now, a strong earthquake has jolted Japan's northern island of Hokkaido.
This is the latest in a series of powerful tremors to hit the island nation. According to the Japanese Meteorological Agency, the 6.2 magnitude quake struck Hokkaido's southern region in the early hours of Monday at a depth of 83 kilometers. Damage to property and threat to life was minimal, given the limited population in the region, some 200 kilometers east of Sapporo.
Well, no tsunami alert was issued, but in the areas that experienced strong shaking, the danger of falling rocks and landslides has increased. The agency also warned that risk of experiencing more quakes of similar strength in the area in the coming week are high. Hours earlier, a magnitude of 5 earthquake occurred in the sea, a few hundred kilometers south of Hokkaido.
The tremors come less than a week after a warning was issued for an increased risk of a megaquake, 8 magnitude or stronger. This following last Monday's 7.7 earthquake of northern Iwate Prefecture.
6 people were reported injured as a result of the quake, which shook large buildings in Tokyo, hundreds of kilometers from the epicenter. In addition, 80-centimeter tsunami waves lashed a port in Iwate, while small waves also hit elsewhere in northern Japan.
Now, it took just a few minutes for a lively birthday bash to transform into a brutal bloodbath in India's Uttar Pradesh.
A minor altercation turned violent after smearing of cake escalated into a shooting incident, leaving 3 people dead. The incident took place in Uttar Pradesh Bulandshahr when a group gathered to celebrate the birthday of a gym trainer. The main accused, Jitu Saini, whose birthday was being celebrated, is currently absconding along with several accomplices.
The incident occurred on Saturday night when the victims allegedly smeared cake on the birthday boy, Saini, in a seemingly playful act. Police said the dispute quickly escalated into a clash. The accused allegedly opened fire at the victims, leading to the deaths of 3 men, all of whom knew the accused.
The young men were admitted to the hospital in critical condition, where they were declared dead. The bodies have been taken for post-mortem examination. 6 teams have been formed to arrest the accused. The family members have named some individuals, and the investigation is underway.
According to police, forensic teams have collected evidence from the spot for detailed analysis, and the investigation of the case remains underway. Well, next up, let's take a look at some of the news stories that are making headlines from India this hour. Amid elections in West Bengal, tensions reached a fever pitch as violent clashes broke out between the ruling TMC and the opposition BJP workers outside a police station in North 24 Parganas. Reports suggest a dispute over campaign banners escalated into a full-scale confrontation involving stone pelting. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is scheduled to hold a public meeting in the region today.
India reels under severe heatwave conditions with 98 of the world's 100 hottest cities. The IMD has forecast severe heat conditions will continue, with maximum temperatures expected to remain significantly above normal over the next few days. Temperatures in most regions have surpassed 40 degrees Celsius, with some locations like Banda in Uttar Pradesh recording 47.4 degrees Celsius. The national capital also recorded its hottest day of the year at 42.8 degrees Celsius. Well, Lebanon's health ministry has said that Israeli strikes in the country's south have killed 14 people, making it the deadliest day since a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah took effect just over a week ago.
Now, the escalation comes as both sides trade fresh accusations of violating the fragile truce. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the military is acting vigorously against Hezbollah, while the group has vowed to continue responding to what it calls ongoing violations.
Since the April 17th ceasefire, late extended by 3 weeks, Israeli forces have continued strikes in Lebanon, including a ground incursion into the south. Troops are now operating within Yellow Line, a roughly 10-kilometer deep buffer zone along the border, where residents have been warned not to return.
Now, these 36 people have been killed in Israeli strikes since the truce began. Israel's military also confirmed 1 soldier killed in combat in southern Lebanon, with 6 others wounded.
On the ground, Israeli military convoys were seen moving along the northern border. Smoke was seen rising in southern Lebanon after the Israeli army issued an evacuation order to 7 towns north of Litani River.
Well, following evacuation orders, hundreds of cars and trucks were seen on Sunday loaded with mattresses heading north of Sidon city. People were fleeing different villages in southern Lebanon amid Israeli warnings to residents of villages in the Nabatea province.
The conflict has taken a heavy toll, with more than 2,500 people killed and over 7,700 wounded in Lebanon since it began. The United Nations peacekeeping force has also confirmed the death of an Indonesian peacekeeper in a recent blast, with a preliminary UN probe indicating an Israeli tank shell as the cause.
Israel's president has delayed Prime Minister Netanyahu's pardon request.
Isaac Herzog has signaled that any decision on a pardon for Netanyahu will not come anytime soon. Herzog made it clear that a plea agreement should be the first path forward in Netanyahu's long-running corruption trial. The president emphasized that all efforts to reach a deal outside the courtroom must be exhausted before he would even consider intervening.
Now, this development adds a new layer of uncertainty to a case that has already deeply polarized Israeli society. Netanyahu has been entangled in legal troubles for nearly a decade. His indictment in 2019 triggered a prolonged period of political instability, leading to 5 rounds of national elections between 2019 and 2022.
Well, with another election scheduled by the end of October 2026, the timing of this legal and political drama could once again have far-reaching consequences. Herzog's statement followed reports that he may be considering a mediation role to facilitate a plea bargain. However, his office has declined to confirm whether such efforts are currently underway.
Netanyahu filed his request for a presidential pardon last November. Under Israeli law, the president does have the authority to grant pardons, but there is no historical precedent for doing so while a trial is still in progress.
Well, U.S. President Donald Trump has publicly urged Herzog to grant a pardon to Netanyahu, with court proceedings set to resume this week. Netanyahu will return to the legal arena at a critical moment. Well, despite mounting political pressure over his leadership, party unity and a controversial diplomatic appointment, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer insists that he is not going anywhere.
A row over the appointment of Peter Mandelson as ambassador to the United States has triggered criticism after it emerged that officials had raised concerns during the security vetting process. Senior civil servant Ollie Robbins described what he called constant pressure from Downing Street during the process.
Well, Starmer denies any wrongdoing and insists that it was simply the routine urgency of government and not interference. The opposition, led by Badenoch, is pushing for a formal inquiry and questioning whether the Prime Minister misled Parliament. Some have gone further, calling the appointment a serious error in judgment.
In a series of interviews, Keir Starmer dismissed suggestions that his leadership is under threat. Asked if his premiership was over, he replied no. He says he intends to continue and to lead his party into the next general election.
Yet inside his own party, confidence appears to be wavering. Some ministers remain supportive but cautious. Others are increasingly uneasy about the political cost of the ongoing controversy. Broader challenges are also exposing divisions within government. Disagreements persist over the future of oil and gas exploration as well.
The Prime Minister, however, claims that majority of his party is supportive of him and insists that the current turmoil is part of the political cycle and not a sign of collapse. Now, Germany's political dynamics are shifting. The country is witnessing a significant surge in the support for the far-right party called AfD Alternative for Deutschland.
German far-right is scripting its rise from the country's east, where it has become the most popular party in recent times. Germany's eastern state of Saxony-Anhalt is going to the elections this September, and polls are showing that AfD could win outright majority. If that happens, it would be the first time a far-right party will hold power in a German state since World War II.
Now, AfD is gaining big on the national front as well. According to the latest poll released by polling agency INSA, AfD is polling at 28%. Now, this is the party's highest polling number since its inception. Compared to last year's election, support for AfD has surged by 7.2%. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz's Christian Democratic Union is trailing behind with 24% support, which is 4.5% lower than what it was at the time of election last year. Former Chancellor Olaf Scholz's SPD is at third position with 14%.
The far-right has been at the margins of German politics for the most part since World War II, but AfD is not bringing the far-right at the forefront of German politics. Last year, Germany's Domestic Intelligence Service classified AfD as right-wing extremist group.
The decision drew criticism from the Donald Trump administration. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio slammed the decision as tyranny in disguise and called on Germany to reverse the course. Now, 15 industrial spray drones vanished from a New Jersey facility last month.
The theft has spooked the FBI, and American federal investigators are now treating this as a potential bioterrorism threat. 15 industrial-grade spray drones worth nearly $900,000 were stolen from a shipping facility in Hudson County. According to reports, a delivery driver used forged documents to trick the logistics company and make off with a fleet of Ceres RC-31 drones.
Authorities are concerned because each drone operates as a potential delivery system that could disperse hazardous materials over wide areas. And these are 500-pound machines, each one capable of dispersing 31 to 40 gallons of liquid across vast acreage using precise GPS autopilot. In unauthorized hands, there is a risk they could be repurposed as a delivery system for hazardous substances. Now, this theft follows a series of unexplained drone sightings reported over New Jersey late last year, which had already raised questions regarding the security of critical infrastructure.
Well, a new poll shows that most Americans support birthright citizenship as the U.S. Supreme Court prepares to rule on a major challenge to the policy.
And according to a Reuters Ipsos survey conducted between April 15th to 20th, 64% of Americans opposed ending automatic citizenship for babies born in the U.S. Just 32% supported scrapping the policy. And the poll also highlights sharp political divisions on the issue. Only 9% of Democrats support ending birthright citizenship. Republicans are more divided. 62% of them favor ending it, while 36% want to keep the current system.
The issue is now before the Supreme Court, which is expected to deliver a ruling by the end of June. The case stems from an executive order signed in January 2025 when Trump assumed office for the second time.
Now, it was quickly challenged in court and is now shaping up to be a landmark civil rights decision. During oral arguments on April 1st, the court's conservative majority appeared skeptical of the policy change.
Now, birthright citizenship is just one of several high-stakes issues before the court this term. The justices are also weighing cases on transgender rights, election rules, as well as congressional district maps, decisions that could shape the political landscape ahead of the November midterm elections.
Another major issue is transgender athletes in school and college sports. In cases from Idaho and West Virginia, the court is expected to allow states to restrict transgender athletes from competing in women's sports.
The poll also shows strong public support for such restrictions. 67% of respondents support banning transgender girls and women from female school sports. Support is especially high among Republicans at 92% compared to 44% of Democrats.
Now, the court is also considering rules around mail-in voting, specifically whether ballots postmarked by Election Day should be counted if they arrive later. 65% of Americans support counting those ballots.
The court will also decide whether a Louisiana map designed to increase black representation is constitutional. A group of white voters argue that the map relies too heavily on race, while others say race should not be a factor in drawing districts.
Now, the Federal Reserve is widely expected to leave monetary policy unchanged at its meeting in the coming week.
Those bets come in an environment where the economy continues to grow, although with intensifying risks and transportation fuel costs are pushing inflation higher. The West Asia crisis is set to keep the Fed in a wait-and-watch mode at current Chair Jerome Powell's swan song meeting. We decode that and more in this next report. Take a look.
Absolutely nothing is priced in terms of Fed rates for the April 29th policy decision meeting, but the market still leans in the direction of eventual rate cuts by the end of the year. The Fed itself continues to have 0.25% rate cut in its March economic projections for 2026. The consensus amongst economists remains a little more aggressive, predicting 2.25% cuts in the latter part of the year, one in September and one in December. The main interest will be Jerome Powell's press conference, which in theory will be his last given his term as chair ends on May 15th. Well, as such, there will be questions over how he sees his legacy and his relationship with President Trump and whether he will choose to stay on at the Fed. Given his term as a governor doesn't end until January 2028, for now there is conflicting news whether this week's meeting will be the last for the current Fed chair. U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro on Friday said the Department of Justice has ended its probe into Powell tied to the renovation of Fed's headquarters. Instead, there would be an internal investigation led by the central bank's Inspector General. But a day later, President Trump said the probe has not been dropped.
Do you agree with the decision by Jeanine Pirro to drop the investigation into Jerome Powell?
Well, I want to find out. It's not dropped. They're looking into the whole thing about the cause.
Republican Thom Tillis has stalled the confirmation of Kevin Warsh until what he calls a vindictive prosecution of the current Fed boss has ended. Powell has already said he will stay on as chair pro tempore, which would only intensify tensions between the Fed and the president. In terms of the outlook for monetary policy, nothing new is expected. The minutes from the last decision suggested that the vast majority of policymakers saw employment risks as skewed to the downside. Inflation was also projected to be slower because of the economic risks from the developments in West Asia. That is likely to remain the way. The committee assesses the situation with little prospect of any immediate change in policy signaled. In terms of inflation, it has been 5 years since the either headline or core consumer price inflation were at below the 2% target. Higher fuel and airline fares mean inflation looks set to break back above 4% imminently. But the Fed can't do anything to ease the current energy supply shock. The central bank's focus is to ensure that inflation expectations remain contained, and for now that seems to be the case. Hence, investors expect some mildly hawkish rhetoric coming from officials. The Fed has to walk a very thin line and optimize policy for two very different goals, inflation and jobs. The central bank still views the current stance of monetary policy as being modestly restrictive. But with the new and a more dovish Fed chair taking office and key elections this year, rate cuts later are widely expected. For the Fed nominee, political pressure for action will continue if he toes Trump's line on rates. This is Bureau Report. WION World is One.
Shifting our focus to the world of sports, some tennis news now. Jannik Sinner is through to the round of 16 at the Madrid Masters.
Now, the world number one made light work of Elmer Muller in their third round clash at the ATP 1000 tournament. The Italian proved too consistent and clinical for Muller. The world number 169 was facing a top 10 opponent for the first time, but the top seed quickly asserted control. Muller took a medical timeout while trailing 2-5. He received treatment on his abdominal area from the tournament physio. Despite the setback, the Dane showed the grit to continue. However, Sinner never loosened his grip and went on to win the match in straight sets 6-2, 6-3 in just 1 hour and 18 minutes. With this victory, the four-time Grand Slam champion has extended his Masters 1000 win streak to 24. Sinner is now just 4 wins away from becoming the first player to win 5 straight Masters 1000 titles. The 24-year-old is looking to back up his titles in Paris, Indian Wells, Miami, and Monte Carlo. He will take on 19-seed Cameron Norrie for the quarterfinal spot in Madrid.
2-0, 6-2, 6-3.
And the Hollywood box office is witnessing its best of days.
Let's take a look at all the films which made its best mark this week. Michael, the highly anticipated Michael Jackson biopic, has moonwalked straight to the top of the charts. The movie has scripted history with a collection of $217.4 million. The Jafar Jackson surpassed the existing records of Oppenheimer and Bohemian Rhapsody to become the biggest global opener for a biopic in cinema history.
Super Mario Galaxy movies celebrated another colossal win. The animated sequel has officially crossed the $800 million mark worldwide. The movie recently released in Japan, where it earned $11 million. This was one of the best openings for an American film in the market. Much like its predecessor, the movie is on its way to become the next billion-dollar hit.
Project Hail Mary, starring Ryan Gosling, is showing stellar endurance. The film has now grossed $613 million. It's a successful run for a film which is running in theaters on its 6th week.
Christopher Borgle's R-rated romantic comedy, The Drama, starring Zendaya and Robert Pattinson, has proved it has serious legs. Budgeted at just $28 million, the film has surpassed the $100 million milestone globally. The movie's total collection now stands at $101 million. All right, with that, we caught a wrap to World DNA for today. News and updates will follow on the other side. You're watching Beyond Voice 1. Stay tuned.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
In this rapid